Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, my name is Ewan Aitken. I have the huge privilege of being CEO of Cyrenians, of which the SCCR is an integral and wonderful part. That song is one of my favourites. Comes from the 1980s. I am that old. In fact, I'm even older than I look. It's from my Brighton days. I was talking recently, I don't know what you guys had for breakfast, talking to a friend of mine down there. We were talking about what I had for breakfast. He said, oh, I had the full Brighton. That's yogurt and muesli. Sorry, if you had to be my age to get that joke, sorry about that. So, that song, though, reminds me of those days. And it reminds me, too, of the aspirations I had those days, of the things I wanted from life, the way I wanted things to be. Particularly, I suppose, in my relationships. I wanted them to be perfect. But, of course, the challenge we have, and the challenge we're going to explore today, is what we mean by perfect. Particularly when we have conflict in that relationship. Particularly when things suddenly aren't exactly as you thought they were going to be, because somebody else has got a different view, and a different opinion, and a different agenda, a different way of dealing with the same thing. And that's where perfection suddenly seems to be a bit further away than we thought it was. This morning I was on Good Morning Scotland talking about the conference today, and I was delighted to hear the interviewer ask me, are you trying to normalise conflict? Because that's what we're about. Now that might seem an odd thing today, because our perceptions of conflict are too often around having a go, sticking the head in people, falling out. All those kinds of wonderfully Scottish things that we do, you know. What's a description of Scotland? A fight, you know. We're about helping folk individually, one by one, develop the tools so they understand that conflict, disagreement, division is actually part of normal human life, and it's how you deal with it. And that's where things like Keep the Heat come from, and the other online tools that have been developed. But we're also about questioning and challenging the culture of Scotland. Because we won't really be able to give people the space to deal with disagreement and conflict differently if our culture is still about, well, when in doubt, stick the head in them. Which I know is a bit of a hyperbole, but actually, so often that is the case. So today, it's the 6th of our conferences where we're going to dig in behind simply the skills, although they're an important part of it, but the context in which these things happen. The conversations we need to have about creating those contexts, and the support we need to give folk when they do find themselves in places of conflict, when relationships aren't just as they thought perfection was going to be. That's why we've got folk from the law, we've got folk from education, we've got folk from health, we've got folk from right across the third sector, and we've got you guys with all your experiences and all the things that you bring to this particular table, the stories you have to tell, the learning you've made when you've gone through those circumstances, the lived experience that we have of the consequences of conflict. I used to be a politician. I know all about conflict. And of course, as a politician, I can't help but use numbers. So, 5,000 young people become homeless every year because of conflict in Scotland. 122,000 will, at least one night in the year, sleep rough. 1 million days of rough sleeping is the estimate in Scotland of young people. A large part because of the tools of conflict weren't within their grasp. Dealing with conflict weren't within their grasp. That's ultimately what we're about. We're about reducing those numbers and changing the society we're part of so that those numbers become smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's great to welcome you today. I'm really glad you'll all come today. I hope you have a really, really good time and you really are able to learn and to listen and to make that contribution to that change we're about. And I'm so finally delighted to welcome your chair of the day, our patron for the SCCR, Drew Drummond. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Ewan, for those kind words of introduction. Welcome. It's just great to be here. As I look across around the room here today, there's a few kindred spirits, fellow travellers. Just great to be back, and thank you for coming to join us today. We are really here because of those relationships. It is a result of those conversations, those opportunities, the momentum that we've been able to create. So just thank you for being here, but thank you for also being part of the journey that is the Scottish Centre of Conflict Resolution. There are also a few new faces. So I hope all of those of you that have travelled with us previously will be able to extend a really warm welcome. We're delighted that you're here, and we're really looking forward to really cracking this title, which is a bit of a cracker, isn't it, in terms of how do we conquer conflict. We all have ideas, we all have opinions, we all have views, perspectives, reflections. Today is about having a safe space, a safe environment to really explore that. And I'm keen that, as the Australians would say, we really put in and we try and leave having had some thoughts, ideas, what we can actually take forward. Our journey has been significant. I stood up at our launch in May 2014, and we highlighted the tragedy that there were 6,000 young people homeless right then due to family breakdown. Not good enough. Not good enough. 2 years on, here we are, and I'm delighted to report, as Ewan's just shared, that is reduced to under 5,000. But it's still too many. And that's really why we're here, in terms of trying to find ways, approaches that can try and address reducing that number. But let's not just make it about the young people and them being homeless. Conflict affects all of us. We all carry conflict. It's how we deal with it. And I think the work of the Scottish Centre of Conflict Resolution, really in measuring its impact and its value, has been significant to being able to highlight and really make sure that we remain a priority. Because Margaret Burgess, a former housing minister, and Aileen Campbell, who we'll hear from later on this afternoon, the Children, Young People and Families Minister, have really highlighted how important it is that the work that's going on in conflict resolution, that all of us here today are responsible for and taking accountability for, remains a priority for the Scottish Government. So really, thank you for being here, and just for the impact to really continue and grow. To give you some updated figures, 80% plus of professionals and practitioners, as a result of having the conversation, we lead very, very busy lives. Having the conversation around how we deal with, how we manage conflict, are now able and feeling culturally that it's okay to talk about what's not working as opposed to what is working. Similarly, there's 65% of young people that are able to be more confident and see conflict resolution as part of their toolkit of a life skill. I was on the phone to a senior banking executive just the other week, and he said, "What does success for the SCCR look like?" Well, I went straight back to him and I said, well, that's all of us, whom we work with, being able to be confident that the young people within our classroom can look back and be confident to have the courageous conversation. And that leads on to the final statistic I'll share with you before we move on with our conference, is that over 70% of parents feel, as a result of the work that we've contributed and present forward with yourselves, taking key knowledge, taking research and linking that to a platform that makes it more readily accessible than dealing with it after the event. I'm very encouraged and look forward to really trying to break the mould, as our title suggests, on how we take forward. But 70% of parents now able to feel in their toolkit they've got more than just what's right in front of them. They don't just need to react. They can choose how they respond with the toolkits that are then available through conflict resolution. That is all of us here today that have got to take a part to play and a responsibility for that. So welcome on our journey, wherever you are, and just I hope we've got a great program for you today, and I just hope that by the title, Conquering Conflict, How We Break the Mould, that can be clear enough for every single one of you here, that I hope you leave at about 4:30 this afternoon with an idea, with a contact, with a network, with a relationship that you didn't otherwise arrive with this morning. So there's a real value on the return of your investment of being here today. because that is what will be and will make what the Scottish Centre Conflict Resolution will build upon and take forward. So I really look forward to taking you through today as your chair, but it's really up to all of us, is it not, that we leave with something that is really a can-do as opposed to what we can't do about how we break the mould of conflict. We need to change culture. If we are to reduce that figure, I hope you will feel able to, or actually I'm going to ask it differently. We need your help. Let's leave it at that.